if every device on a local area network, if every device that uses TCP/IP has to have an IP address, well, how do we organize it? So what I want to do in this episode is talk about how we organize our IP addresses. In particular, two things called a network ID and a subnet mask. Now, to give us a frame of reference, let me give you an initial setup. Here is my little network. In this case, well, I'm not using fruit this time, fruit and vegetables, I'm using blocks, but it still works out. So I've got three devices. This could be three computers, this could be two computers and a printer, this could be a computer and a camera and a printer. Doesn't matter to me. In general, we call these devices nodes when we're talking at this level. Now they're all plugged into a switch, and in this case they're cabled, physically Ethernet cabled into this switch. And then there's a fourth connection on the Ethernet switch that goes to a router. Now on the other end of this router, it goes out, we'll pretend like this is a cable modem. So one side is Ethernet and then the other side is a cable connection to my cable company. Now if you're looking at this, a lot of you might go, well now Mike, I have a setup like this, but I don't have a switch and a router, I just have a router. Well, you got to be careful. A lot of these devices today, this little device right here is actually a switch and a router all built into one box. In fact, it's even a wireless access point. So trust me when I tell you, you do have a switch and a router even though you just call it a router. So the basic setup is this. These three devices need to talk to each other sometimes. Sometimes I need to send something to a printer, or sometimes I need to query the camera to see who's at my front door. So there's a lot of traffic going on inside my network. But on the same token, I might be firing up Google and I want to get on the internet and I want to get my Google information, whatever it might be. So the trick with TCP/IP is that we have to have some way of saying, listen system, this is just a local connection between two computers on the local area network versus, oh, wait a minute, this is a connection out to the internet. And that's where network ID and subnet mask come into play. So I want to show you right now your first real networking command. So if you take a look right here, I've run a command called ipconfig, and it's on the A+, so make sure you know this command. Now, when you look at ipconfig, now first of all, this is a very simplified ipconfig. I actually have turned some stuff off to make it easier to read. What I want you to see in particular are these three lines. Now, first of all, you'll see this is my Ethernet card. This other goo where it says media disconnected, ignore it for now. So here's my IP address. Notice it says IPv4. There's this thing called a subnet mask, which is 255s and zeros, and then a default gateway. So IP address, subnet mask, and default gateway. Let me explain to you how all this works. When I set up this network, I decide that of the four values that are my network, some of them are going to be the same. On this particular network, I've decided that all of these computers are going to be 192.168.4. Now, in other episodes, I'll show you how we actually configure that. But for right now, I made a decision that my network is going to be called 192.168.4. Now notice I didn't say a fourth value. That fourth value is the optional one. So this could be 192.168.5, and this can be 192.168.155, and this can be 192.168.14. We never do anything in order in this world. So, oh, and by the way, this router, he's part of this network too. Look at that. He's connected to the switch, so he gets an IP address as well. Keep in mind, that's really important. In fact, I'm going to call him 192.168.4.1. So no matter how they're configured, these all have to be configured and set up with these addresses. Now think about that address for a minute. What I've done is I've set it up so that the first three values are always the same. So when we talk about my network, we always call it 192.168.4. In fact, a lot of times we'll even put a 0 on the end. There can be no computer with a 0 or a 255. So what we've just said is my network ID, what defines my network, is 192.168.4. That's a network ID. Now, that's good for us as human beings to say this, but how do we tell the individual computers? And that's where the subnet mask comes into play. So let's take a look at this subnet mask one more time. When you take a look at this subnet mask, you'll see the first three values are 255. When your computer sees a 255, it says these have to match, okay? And then you see that 0, that means that can be different. So imagine this situation. I've got this computer right here, and I'm going to say he's 192.168.4. Let's say 10 for starters, okay? And he wants to talk to 192.168.4.11 in this particular case. So when he gets ready to send this packet out, what he'll do is he's going to look at his subnet mask, and he's going to see that the first 3 values match because the subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. So the first 3 values match. That tells him that he can go ahead and send him directly to this other computer. Let's come up with another example. Let's say I want to send it to 27.14.13.6. Now this computer takes a look at his subnet mask and he goes, wow, those first 3 numbers don't match my first 3 numbers. When he sees that, he knows to automatically send it to the router or the default gateway. Let's take a look at ipconfig one more time. You have to have your default gateway punched into your system in order to be connected to the internet. And his default gateway is 192.168.4.1, and that is the IP address of my actual router itself. So all of this takes place simply to be able to let your system know a long distance call from a local call. Your network ID defines all the computers in your network, and the subnet mask lets you know exactly where the network ID is and when to send things out to the internet. So at this point, you might be saying to yourself, okay, Mike, I can wrap my head around network ID and subnet mask, but where does it really come from? Who sets this up? Well, the answer is usually you have a network administrator who decides, like on the day your network was first set up, what your network ID is going to be. And your job as a tech is to go into Windows systems and set all this stuff up. So that's what I want to do right now. Now, I'm going to be doing this in Windows 10, but I don't care if you got Vista, 7, 8, whatever. They all work pretty much exactly the same way, and we start at the control panel. So I'm going to be looking for Network and Sharing Center. This particular applet gets different names depending on the version of Windows, but it's always there. So I'm going to open this up. And what I'm looking for is change adapter settings. So let me click on this. Now, pretty much any computer today is going to have more than one network card in it. Here on my particular computer, I've got a regular Ethernet card, and I also have some virtualization stuff. So I'm ignoring the virtualization stuff because I know I'm working on my real Ethernet card. So what I'm going to do is right-click on this and select Properties. And I'm going to go down to right here. Do you see that? Internet Protocol version 4, IPv4. And now I'm going to select Properties. Now most of the time you'll see where it says obtain an IP address automatically. There's 2 ways that you set up your IP address and your subnet mask in your default gateway. You can do it statically, which is what we're going to do right now, which is surprisingly not done that much anymore. And then you can do it dynamically. Check out the DHCP episode if you want to see the dynamic side of this. Anyway, so doing this statically, I'm going to say use the following IP address. Now, I got this IP address because the network administrator told me what to set this thing up to. And he told me set it to 192.168.4.101. But before I type in 101, let me show you something. I'm going to try to type in a value that's not accurate. I can type in anything from 0 to 255, but watch what happens if I try to type 300. It's not going to like that. So Windows does a pretty good job of helping you out. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 101 like I was supposed to. And then I'm going to type in the subnet mask. Now, what's interesting, you can see when I click subnet mask, it automatically put in 3 255s and a 0. It's anticipating something. And watch the special IP addresses episode to see what happens there. But by coincidence, this does happen to be exactly what I want because my network administrator told me that the subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. So thank you, Windows, for doing that so easily for me. Now, the last thing is the default gateway. And really, the default gateway is the local area network connection on my router. And my network administrator sets that up, and he told me that it's 192.168.4.1. It is etiquette that when you have a network ID that your router is given the .1 address. It's not a law of physics. It could be any IP address within your network ID, but if I came into a network and the router was not .1, I would be confused, well, at least at first. So now I've got all this information set up in there, and DNS is for another episode, so we're going to save this just as it is right now, hit OK, hit close. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run ipconfig again. And if you take a look right here, you'll see that the configuration settings I have put in are showing up exactly as they should within ipconfig. So when you talk about a network ID, that's like saying what street you're on. Nobody actually has the address of Main Street. There are 101 Main Street and 222 Main Street and all that. So Main Street just identifies a neighborhood. The network ID just identifies the group of IP addresses that you're going to be using. And the subnet mask is entered into every single computer on that network ID. Within the network ID, all computers have the exact same subnet mask. There's absolutely no difference to that. Now again, what we've done here is static, and that works great, but I'll bet a lot of you are going, I've never had to type any of that stuff in. And again, that's because another way to do this is called dynamic, and we're going to save that for the dynamic episode.